this interview we're having a look at a physical experience that manifests the moment someone within our world and reality does something so unexpected or out of the ordinary, and within that unexpectedness and out of the ordinary, the nature of what they do or have done has shocked one to such an extent that in that moment or even afterwards, it's like one's entire human physical body goes into an absolute silence, but at the same time the body feels more cemented, like hard, constricted, and it's like one standing there just like a statue, and with that develops an extensive pain within the chest area, and it's like that moment shocked one to such an extent that one feel like crying, but that shock is so deep physically into oneself and one's beingness that not even tears want to come. It's like that moment permeated and infiltrated one's total mind, physical and being, and for a moment shocked one essentially into reality. And with that initial physical reaction then accumulated into the chest area, where the chest area then signify the main point that one essentially experienced in that moment, which the human physical body indicate, reveal, or show through an extensive pain. And within that also one experience oneself as being dead and empty inside. So let us have a look at how this happens, what it is, why it happens, and what is that experience that one have within oneself. To understand that or such a moment, we first have to look at how relationships exist within our minds, within our mind consciousness systems. Now, if one have a listen to the What is Sex series that is available on Equaf, one will have a more specific, tangible perspective in relation to how relationship systems develop within our minds. However, for this video interview, we will reference an overview, not going into too much detail, as the detail is quite an extensive history, all of which is walked in the What is Sex series. So how a relationship is manifested within ourselves, in our minds. And we have also walked this before within previous material and videos, is one actually have within one's mind a placement holder in which the person or people that one is in a relationship with and toward is manifested as an actual picture within this placement holder within a particular specific relationship domain within one's mind consciousness system, where there are actual sections categorized in relation to the extent or the nature of one's relationships with other human beings, where, for example, one will have sections of placement holders where there'd be pictures of, for example, all the females that are in your world and your reality. You'll have another section with all the males in your world and reality, and they are placed within your mind in order of the nature of the extent of one's experience towards that person or people, Like, for example, let's say the relationship is simply an acquaintance relationship. That placement holder with a picture of that person will be placed more into the back of the domain, whereas if you have a more direct best friend relationship, that picture holder placement will be more in the forefront of the domain within the mind, and will be charged with a particular specific energy charge. And with that, from the mind domain, which is positioned within the head region, it would be connected to an entire personality system within your total mind consciousness system. And what will constitute that relationship one have with that picture of that person in one's mind, in relationship to one's own personality within oneself, in relation to that person, is all one's memories, experiences, conversations, memory imprints, live moment memories, one's thoughts, one's backchat, one's internal conversations, one's reactions. All of that accumulate into a personality, and that personality then becomes one's primary relationship with that person within one's own mind. Thus, essentially, we never really have any form of actual real relationships with another human being as who they really are. We only have an actual relationship with them within our own minds, as a picture of them placed within our own mind, and our own individualized experience toward them within our own mind that we programmed, created, and manifested ourselves. And therefore, even within ourselves, we have our own description, reference, experience, a total profile of who this person is within ourselves. But that is not necessarily to say that that is who they really are as a person. I mean, we in no way have any reality about who a person really is within the totality of their mind consciousness system, conscious, subconscious, unconscious, their total life experience, their beingness, their decisions, their choices, their actions, their secrets. And simply within that one point, we can see, realize, and understand for ourselves that our experiences toward our relationships in our world and reality is and always has been only self-created in our own minds within our own frames of reference. So now within our mind, let's say one has a relationship with a particular human being, and one has walked with this human being for quite some years. And therefore, one has quite a database within oneself as one's personality, as one's relationship towards this person within one's own mind, where we have our placement holder of our most intimate relationship within ourselves that is obviously charged most within that domain within our mind, because that's our primary relationship within ourselves and world and reality. And one has an accumulation of one's memories and experiences and thoughts, beliefs, perceptions, ideas, reactions, basically a total profile of who this person is within our own minds. And one day, this person comes home and they're throwing things around the house, and they're yelling, and they're screaming, and this particular nature of behavior you have never seen in this person before, not through all the years that you've been with them. And for a moment, the initial reaction, I'm going to walk it with you in what happens slowly but surely, but within reality, because we're not in our human physical bodies, we don't necessarily experience the real-time outflows of what would happen in such a moment. You might only experience that chest pain that manifests together with the experience of being empty, dead, and just standing there stone cold. But what would initially happen is, upon seeing this, one would one's mind would feel like it stops for a moment and one's total insides go silent, and one's eyes would go large, and it would be like everything stops inside you, because inside your personality, as your personality, connected in relationship with this person within one's own mind, there is no reference of what this person is doing in your world and reality, because you've never seen this before within them. And therefore what happens with the mind stopping, with you stopping, where it feels like you're stopping, is the mind consciousness system within that personality within yourself in relationship to that person's profile in your mind integrates that moment, references it, calibrates it within itself, imprints the live moment memories, meaning captures the moments as much as it can to upgrade its current profile of this particular person. So that would be where everything for a moment stops inside yourself. Then you find you'll blink quite fast. That blinking means that the program is starting to integrate into your personality, into that relationship profile system within your mind consciousness system. And then within that you'll start feeling reactions coming up, because what's happening now is you are now within your mind, within this personality, relating yourself to what is happening, and there's all sorts of other memories coming up within your subconscious and your unconscious, because now within your mind you're in relationship to this moment, to this person, to what is happening, because it's successfully been integrated into your mind, personality, and relationship profile system. And because it's still an indirect moment, meaning the person is still trashing the house externally, not yet directing anything to you personally, your reactions will initially be in relationship to subconscious and unconscious memories coming up, and with that there would be emotional and feeling reactions that would start emerging. Then let's say what happens is this person turns to you and starts yelling and screaming with a velocity that you had never experienced before with this person, and this person starts lifting their hand and they want to hit you, and they stop, and in that moment you feel a physical shock manifest through and as your entire human physical body, and again everything stops, but it feels like your organs are constricting and you're taking a breath, a deep in breath, like, and in that moment of taking that deep in breath, that's where you imprint that moment of pain within the chest area, because what's happened in that one moment is that you could never conceive within your mind, within your beingness, within your physical, within your entire life experience, that something like this would happen to you. And you had no reference of how to handle such an occurrence in your world and reality, meaning usually some human beings would have references in their unconscious or subconscious based on past experiences of either being yelled at, screamed at, things being thrown in the house, or being hit. But it does happen that beings have no reference to that in ever making something like that personal, ever considering that something like that would ever happen to them, and therefore such a thing does not exist in any form within their entire mind consciousness system where they in any way personalize themselves to something like that ever happening to them, and therefore it doesn't exist. Then what the mind does within that relationship system toward that, what happens within, not the relationship system, sorry, the personality system, towards that relationship profile with that person, because there's no context of this moment manifesting, the whole relationship personality system profile connection within you shuts down. And because even that moment in the mind calibrating it, it happens so fast and is such a shock to the mind, the being, the physical, and everything, that that shock is so real, because it walks through and gets into through the very being, through the mind consciousness system within the physical, that the mind just cannot calibrate it, meaning it has no program with how to deal with it, because it's a being's real experience. And therefore that relationship connection within the being toward that person in relation to the profile they created of them, it shuts down, because that moment negated everything that that person believed of who that person was within their world and reality. And when that profile system shuts down, it feels like one will experience a death in that moment within self, because a whole relationship within oneself, within one's mind, that has become part of oneself over an extended period of time is essentially shut down. So what one experiences then is that death experience where it feels like you're empty and heavy, and there's something gone, there's something missing. That's simply what one is experiencing as the mind in relationship to a relationship system deactivating within self. And obviously that moment, the consequence that will manifest from that is that the person will have to reassess their relationship to what this person had done in getting close to hitting them, or even sometimes going into the action of hitting them. And with the mind consciousness system having so many multiple backups, people tend to reconstitute that relationship profile and justify, validate, or excuse the action that had happened, instead of self-honestly observing the absolute unacceptable nature of such an action, of taking out one's own mind possessions on another human being and abusing another human being because of oneself not taking self-responsibility. So if something like this happens in one's world and reality, this calls for serious consideration, investigation, walking oneself into reassessing and reevaluating what it is that one is accepting and allowing within one's mind, thoughts, backchat, internal conversations and reactions, and commit oneself to stop self-abuse and the abuse of others as oneself. And if this is becoming a pattern, one obviously have to become self-honest and realize that one cannot then live with other human beings at this stage until one has sorted one's mind out, because one is becoming a danger not only to oneself but to others. And if one is serious within one's discipline of ensuring one do not accept and allow such actions, then do it, live it, and don't do it again. I mean, that decision can be made very clear and actually walked from one moment, from one breath, and getting it done. And then for the person experiencing that relationship disconnection, to consider not going and falling back into past patterns in terms of justifying, excusing, or validating such an action, but obviously communicating and coming into a firm agreement about what will be accepted and allowed within a relationship or agreement and what not. Yelling, screaming, shouting, hitting. I mean, all of that is a consequence that is manifested and created into and as another human being within their lives, their life experiences, and is and should absolutely not be allowed in any way whatsoever, because that is simply accumulated consequence from an individual not taking responsibility for themselves, their own mind, what's going on in the thoughts, the backchat, internal conversations and reactions. And therefore you've got to take more and more responsibility of what is going on in our minds, not let things accumulate. And this is why we so emphasize within the Destiny process writing, self-forgiveness, self-corrective application, because if you don't get the stuff out, meaning in seeing how it works, so that you can stop participation in it and redirect yourself inside yourself and your living, these things are going to accumulate inside you. And it can accumulate into such an extent that it goes into a possession, because you're accumulating and building energy, and the mind is only equipped to handle so much energy. So if you're busy charging it with an extensive amount of energy, the mind is going to go haywire, and you're going to lose control. I mean, we're already not in control of our minds. Playing with fire in terms of taking it to a point of losing absolute control of even your human physical body is stupid. So assist and support yourself to stop participation in what generates extensive amounts of energies within yourself, so you can stop becoming directive within yourself and your living, and thus eventually within your human physical body to a point where you are always aware of who you are, and so will never accept and allow yourself to lose control. And for the person experiencing this death-like experience, one has to consider having a look at what was the ideas, perceptions, and beliefs that one had initially created as one's relationship profile within oneself of this person. To consider that one thus, in fact, did not really know this person for who they are. Because if one knew who the person really was in their totality, one would not have had such an extensive physical death-like reaction experience within oneself. And if we have a look at even ourselves, how little everyone else really knows about what's really going on within ourselves, and we can self-honestly see that all human beings are essentially exactly the same, in that we don't really know each other, let alone even ourselves. So one first assists and supports self in walking one's own relationship with oneself, one's mind, one's physical, one's living, to get to know how it is that we're creating our internal and external experiences. And then to consider within one's relationship and agreement to lay down some ground rules, so to speak, of what will be accepted and allowed in a relationship agreement and what not, and what will assist and support each other to grow, expand, and become more, rather than abuse, compromise, deception, and secrecy. And for this, we have the agreement course that is now available on the Desteniiprocess, which we strongly suggest be considered, especially if one has a tendency of having conflicting relationships within oneself and one's world. That one can assist and support oneself to stabilize oneself within, to not accept and allow such consequence to accumulate. Alright, so you're just giving a perspective of what happens in moments of experiencing unexpected sudden shocks with people in our world and reality. And I mean, this goes for all relationships in our world and reality, to whomever we've created a relationship profile, and that profile within our mind does not meet reality. And when something happens that shocks us to such an extent through the mind into our very beingness, where that profile just shuts down and one is shocked essentially into reality, into considering that one did not really know this person. Alright, thank you very much.